So to create our form, first going to start out and create a basic forms HTML page on that. And I could go in and now create my form here, and we can see where it's auto-populating things, putting different items in. We can put in a label element here. So I could do something like name, and then I can put an input element here as part of it. Now, as we're looking at these elements here and how it's showing up, so I can save this and just do a quick preview in browser. Let's see what we get. We can see where I have text and an input field. So that input field is waiting for me to type something in. There's no CSS making my page prettier. There's nothing making it happier. We don't have our button. We don't have anything else occurring yet as part of this. We just have our basic form that is showing up. So the three form fields that we're going to work with on the demonstration will be a name, an email, and a comment area. And then we will have to add in a submit button so that we can make our form submit. If you want to be quick and dirty or lazy with what you're doing and you follow the link from D2L, you can go and grab the basic form that is posted on the sample form that we are following the steps on so we can understand how this whole process works. Or we can go and create our own. So I'm going to go create my own because I can, and we'll talk through a little bit more of what these elements mean. So I'll now need another label, and then this time my label is going to be for my email. Then I'll need an input, and it'll be the same, and we'll talk through what these elements are, any options that we need to modify on these as we put it in. My third label now, this is going to be my comments. We could do comments, questions, whatever else you want to put there. Another input. Now this type of input, as we put it in this time on our next one, we need to, instead of setting it as, whoops, it's not an input, my bad. It's a text area. And the text area is going to be then that big block. So if we save this and take a look at the page once more, we'll see that we have a really ugly setup because there's no line return, so everything is showing up on one line. Well, that just looks ugly. So we'll have to put a few breaks in there and kind of fix it. In the text area, we'll notice that it has a kind of a rectangular shape based on 8 rows for text and 80 columns wide. If we don't want to make it that big and want to make it smaller, we could certainly do that. So I could maybe go 50 wide so it saves out and looks a little bit more normal as part of the process. Finally, we will need our final input, and this input is going to be a type of submit, and its value is going to be submit. Now that puts our button on screen, so we get our little submit button. Oh, whoops. And it submitted and dropped me over to my index. And I don't want to go to my index page just yet because that's not doing anything. So I'm going to just remove this action, the default. But if you notice, what it did is I clicked that button and it immediately went to the index.html file. So it loaded that particular file. Didn't do anything with my form data because I haven't figured out how to collect it or how to work with it yet. So we got a couple labels in there, a couple inputs in there, a text area, a button. Got some decent stuff going on here as we are getting the whole thing set up. Now we're going to be changing. We won't be using method in this particular example because we will be setting it up using, oh, no, actually we wanted the, oh no, it didn't have name, that was method. we'll be using the Google form as we're linking to that, but I am going to get rid of the index. So we'll populate this line here with some other content in a little bit as we set this up to make our magic happen on screen. But first I want to make it a little bit prettier. So I'm going to add in a couple line breaks after each entity so that now when I look at my form, it looks a little more form-esque. I'm going to actually just put line breaks after the labels as well. In our instructions, we notice we have these name values going on here. Name equals last name, name equals first name. We will be creating a Google form that matches that. So I'm going to go back here and look at this, and we have name. I'm just going to change this to name right there. And then when I go under email, I'm going to change name equals email here. And questions. Now we will be updating these in a little bit, but it's important for us to remember these three things that we're trying to do and the type of elements that they are when we create our Google form. Now creating a Google form is as easy really as it looks. We wander over into Google Forms and say, I want to make a form. So I'm logged into my Google Docs forms. If you don't have forms under your Google Docs, you just see the word processing, the spreadsheet one, presentation one, you're like, where's my things? If you just type in forms.google.com and then log into whatever Google account that you have, it adds forms to it, and then it brings you to the forms page. So now that I'm here, I'm going to create a blank form, and on this form it will be my contact demo. Now if I look at this type of question, my first question is not going to be multiple choice, but it will be short answer. And it's going to be name. And now if I go onto the navigation on the right hand side, I can click add question. Now this one again is going to be a short answer, and this is going to be email. And once more, I'm going to add a question, and this time instead of being short answer, it's going to be a paragraph, and this is going to be my comments. So I've created 3 questions. Those 3 questions correspond to the 3 kinds of questions that I have on my existing web page. Our next step will be to click on the little 3 dots next to your little avatar icon in the top corner. Clicking on the 3 dots next to your icon is going to give you an option for this thing called Get Prefilled Link. This is going to give us the data that we need. So I click on Prefilled Link. It opens up a new tab. Inside this tab, it asks me to answer my questions that I want pre-filled. So I'm going to type in garbage name. And then I'm going to type in garbage email. Then I will type in garbage comments. And the reason I'm using something so blatant as garbage name, garbage email, and garbage comments is when I hit submit, it's going to give me a massive URL. And if I look at what this URL is, I will find out that in here it gives me things where it says and equals garbage name, and equals garbage email, and it equals garbage comments. I'm like, oh, because by putting this garbage stuff in here, it's giving me what I need. So I'm going to select that link that showed up now at the top, copy it, because we're going to need that link inside our HTML form. So I paste that in, and we can see how beautifully ugly that is. It's absolutely atrocious. But it has a bunch of magic that we are going to need. So now that I've pasted this in, studying this link is going to reveal a couple of things to us as we look at it. We will see that it's now populated it where it says entry.180232428 equals garbage name. And what we want is that entry dot and those numbers that follow after it, because that information is what we need to be able to tell Google to take the form field on our web page and populate my Google form with that information. So I need those things, and that's how I can see that that entry dot number equals garbage name. So I'm going to copy that, and then inside of our first label for name, where it says for equals, inside my quotation marks, I'm going to paste. And we're going to have to put it in a couple more times. Then under our input, type text name equals, we paste it in. And we are going to change where it says value equals and say ID equals and paste it in. So we've now used that value not 1, not 2, but 3 times. Then I will repeat that with my garbage email. So it's entry.411478645. Your number will be different than mine. So I've now selected that, highlight it, and now I go on my email label. I'm just going to put an extra return. So we can see on my email label, 4, then we paste it in. Then under name, paste it in. And I'm going to change value to ID equals and paste it in. So 3 times. Finish where I have my final entry for my garbage comments. So I'm going to copy that, and under comments, paste. And then I will need to add a few extra values to this text area. So I will have to, we have the name here, and then I need to also put in my ID equals, and then paste it in. So for each of our elements, we have pasted in these values. Now, if you're wondering, what is this for thing here? Because it kind of makes sense. We say input, type, okay, we're saying it's a text thing. We're giving it a name, giving it a unique ID. Yeah, that all makes sense. But for, and what we're doing is by having for equals, match whatever is in the name tag on the actual input element or the form element. For the label, we use the for attribute, and then we put that same data. And this allows our browser, when it parses or reads this form, to know that this label is connected to this form field. So if we are using alternative pointing devices, screen readers and things like that, it now has built a connection between the form field and the label attached to that form. So that's why we have that occurring there. Now, we're going to add a few more things on our form element here. We're going to update the action. We're going to give it an ID, and we're going to give it a name. And we need these because we will be adding in some Jquery magic into our project, so we will need to be able to access this by name. So we'll make sense of how that works shortly. But the first thing we want to put in is the action. Now the action, as we look at it, as we wander our way through here, if we look at this first part, it's connecting to our Google Doc form, and then it's grabbing a form ID, and currently it's saying view form. But we're going to change where it says view form. So I'm going to just take this chunk that I have here, paste it into my action, but instead of saying view form, what we will instead say is form response. So that means when our action goes to the Google form, it's going to now take this as a filled out form and put that data into our form responses. So every time I fill out the form, I now have an updated project or updated set of responses that will show up on my Google Forms, which makes it super cool. So now that I've finished copying all the different pieces out of this pre-filled form link from my Google form, I can get rid of that. Now we are going to modify this from a class. We'll say ID equals, and my form is going to be called gform. And I'm going to give it a name of gform. We're doing this so that we can access this with our Google form. There's a few other things that we will want to add on here. By referencing our action, so our action is going to this Google form document, technically it's trying to load that Google form as a page. We're going to hijack that process. So if you remember, when the action said index.html, I clicked on submit and it loaded my index.html file. But we don't want to go to a new page. We want to stay on our current page. We're just going to make the form go away through Jquery and set up a new message. So with that, we're going to then have a hidden element on our page that we're going to submit to, and we'll see how that magic takes place. So the attributes that we now need to add as part of this is I will say target, and my target is going to be my hidden underscore iframe. And you may be asking yourself, well, we don't have a hidden iframe, so WTF, I don't understand. And that's okay. You can be puzzled by this, but know that we're going to add in that hidden iframe as an element onto our page momentarily. I'm also going to add in my onSubmit option here. OnSubmit equals, and inside of that, I'm going to submit a value. Submitted equals true. And we're doing this so that JavaScript actually has something to work with. And then you will be asking yourself, WTF, we don't have any JavaScript on our page either. And it's like, that's okay, but we will. So we're adding a few extra things that we haven't done before. But we're going to use some resources where smart people have written them for us so that we can just copy paste the remaining elements onto our page and everything will become right with the universe. And it's going to be super awesome. Now that I've typed all of this in, I'm going to just go and check out my form and see how does it look. Refresh my page and look at that. Nothing changed because nothing has changed in my main markup. My elements are still there. It's waiting for me to put things in. This form is begging for some CSS to make it look pretty because right now it's butt ugly, which is at that high end of ugly scale. So we need to, you can fix it and make it look pretty, but for now we'll just leave it. So when I look back here and see the elements that I have going on, I've now created my form. I've given my form an ID. I have set up my different elements on here. I'll just put in an extra return, make some more room. And as these elements are on here, we can see that each input has a name and an ID associated with it that matches the for attribute on my label, so they're all connected. If I look through here, make sure that it matches, so I didn't do something wonky in my copy paste. My submit button is there. And now we just have to add in our hidden iframe. And the hidden iframe is allowing us to avoid letting this page kind of load the Google page. So it just stays here, and then we'll use some Jquery to make the form go away. And we will add those parts in now. This hidden iframe is going to allow us to have something to attach to hijack the normal form submit so it doesn't try and load this new page. If we were working with a standard form, we would be loading a CGI or a PHP page, so we would actually be going to that new page. We would be then processing the data and then returning the user to a second PHP page where we now thank them for their kind words and provide any other accolades that we want at that point. But we are trying to work within the restrictions that GitHub Pages does not allow us dynamic web pages, only static web pages, so we can't use PHP. So we are now going to hijack that process and not go to a new page, but we will be sending our data to the Google form, but remaining on this web page the entire time. So I now need to make an iframe here. And for this iframe, we really don't need these values that are defaulting in there. We will use some other ones here. We're just going to give it a name equals hidden underscore iframe. And now after we've done that, we'll give it an ID equals hidden underscore iframe. Oh, and my arrow keys are not working as skillfully as I would like. We're kind of slacking here a little bit because I'm going to add style information directly into this. Otherwise, if we have existing style sheet that we're working with, we could put that information in it as well. And I will just simply give it a value of display none so it doesn't actually show up. Thus, it's a hidden frame. So we set its style to none. And then what we need to do is onload. For this, we are going to reference a little bit of JavaScript here, but don't be scared. It's okay. We're going to say if submitted, which this is technically saying if submitted is true, but if we just say if submitted, we're implying that we mean yes, if it's true, do nothing. And that now ends what we are doing with that iframe. So we have a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of CSS embedded into this object. And because this is an object that is trying to hijack a standalone process, it's not the end of the world that we've embedded this style in JavaScript directly onto the object. But we don't, I mean, we could put this elsewhere, but it's not the end of the world to put it there, because we're not going to ever look at this iframe. We're not going to restyle it later. So it's not one of those, ooh, I put styles, which these are now inline styles, not a separate style sheet, not a style tag, but an inline style that I've attached directly to an object, which if you remember weeks ago, I said that's a horrible, near unforgivable sin of CSS, and yet now I'm doing it because in this particular instance, it's not so bad because it so I'm going to type that in. Let's see. So I can download all of my jQuery. Search links to jQuery. Here it is. And I can say, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. Now, if I want older versions of jQuery, we have some other specialized versions of jQuery we can link to. Now, uncompressed would be if I wanted to be able to see all of the jQuery code, I could actually download that, look at it, and read the whole jQuery library. Now, jQuery is JavaScript. But what it is it's a JavaScript library which has a lot of pre-built, pre-written functions or helpers that allow us to do common tasks with JavaScript without having to write the whole method of instruction ourselves. We can just reference something. So if I want to make something fade out on screen or slowly fade up, I can just say show and hide. It automatically will animate that. Done. I don't have to figure out how do I work out the steps, how do I set up a timed animation. Show, hide, fade out, fade in. All these things are pre-built. So it allows us to do a lot of things really easy. jQuery is also really good at allowing us to select elements in our web page. Now, if I look and see these different versions, uncompressed, can read it. Minified, every space and line return has been removed. So if I look at it, it's one long line, and it looks about like gobbledygook. Now, slim and minified, they've done some other steps to make the file even smaller. But if I look here, now I see my script. It's like, okay, if I want to work with this, I could even just copy this whole thing, or in this case, I'm just going to copy the guts of the script. I can read the details of what is happening here, so I understand it. Whoops, there we go. So this gives me my source and a few extra bonuses there. So within that, paste. So there is my link to jQuery. Now this integrity and cross-origin, other stuff, that's really a discussion we can have for a different time. But the short answer is when we're trying to get scripts to run across multiple web domains, there's some security restrictions the web browsers have in place to help protect you. And this is working on minimizing any issues that could arise with that. So that's the first thing I want to do is link to jQuery. Now, if you're scared of all that other stuff and you just left it as linking to jQuery like this, it's going to work too. I'm just going to leave it there for fun. And do remember, we all do have different definitions of fun. So I'm leaving that there for fun. You may not find that as fun. Now this next script that I'm going to write here is I'm going to set up a variable, and it will be submitted, and I will set its value initially to false. So when our web page loads, the variable submitted is false, meaning I have not submitted my form yet. And if I look on my iframe, we have, as it loads, it says, if submitted is true, well, do nothing, because there's nothing inside those curly braces. Well, submitted is false, so then that's not actually going to do anything yet because it's false. Now, one final script. Now, this particular script is where the real fun is going to happen. This is where we get to play with jQuery. So when we write this script, we're now going to add to the action. So when I press the submit button, yes, it's going to send my data to my form, but it's also going to do some other stuff here. It's going to make the form fade out, and it's going to make a message fade in. So the way that we access anything in jQuery is we use the $sign. So as I use the $sign, that says jQuery. Now inside these parentheses, I want you to do something. And this something I want you to do is to grab a hold of my ID element that is called gform. Now if I look up here, it's the ID on my form, gform. So I'm grabbing that ID. Remember, we have classes and IDs. Classes we access with a dot. IDs we access in our CSS with a hashtag. So here I'm using the hashtag to say I want to access this element. This element, gform, now I'm going to tell it that on my form that when I submit with this, I want to run a function, and we just put the E in here for kicks and giggles. Now what the E says is now that event that we're not, every time we're submitting a function, we can reference the event of clicking on this button. It's actually accessed by this element E right here. But in this example, we're not going to do anything with that event and with the form itself, but in other more interactive versions of playing with this, then we might do something. Then what we're going to do is tell gform that, all elements of gform here. Sorry, my bad, I forgot. There we go. Now we got our punctuation matched again. So we want to tell this entire form and all parts of it to fade out over the course of 2 seconds. Now, if you noticed, when I said 2 seconds, I wrote 2,000 because Jquery measures time in milliseconds, or thousandths of a second. So 1,000 is 1 second, 2,000 is 2 seconds. Now, we also want to tell our form here to prepend. And we're going to put a message on screen. So you can set your message up to be as friendly or not friendly as your personality or your project dictates. Sometimes when you're building these examples, it's just nice to have a little bit of fun with it. So prepend means what we're going to do is in front of the gform that we just made go away, we're now going to stick this text on screen. So then we'll get to see this text show up on screen. All right, form's been saved. Page has been reloaded. So now if I type in my name here, and let's go test name, email, mail@mail.com, and this better work. Now, once we do that, we hit submit, we'll see that my form is going to go away. A message is going to now show up on screen. And if I go back to my form and look at it, I already have now a second response. Test name, mail@mail.com, this better work. So every time I update this, it now comes up, which is super awesome. So we can get our responses here really fast and quick. The moment I hit submit on my form, the moment my Google form is updated, which is crazy. It's crazy that it's that fast and that easy to work with. And once you have your answers there, if you want to look at it in a spreadsheet, we can look at it that way. I'm surprised. Thought I named it though. Okay. There, now it's properly named, not untitled, it's contact demo. So here's my contact demo. We have 2 responses. If I want to test it one more time to verify, reload the page, enter in my name, unicorn. At ninja.com, and horns will kill all ninjas. Okay, back to my form, new response, it's populating. So we've proven that it works. If I want to see it in spreadsheet view, I could create a new spreadsheet, hit create, and now let's allow pop-ups. And now it's in that pop-up form, and there it is as a spreadsheet. So we can gain access to the data. It's a really easy way to make the form, and it's really slick that we can pull this off. especially knowing that it will work on a GitHub page, which allows us to bypass the dynamic page restriction of GitHub pages.